Jennie Joseph presents The Hands That Caught Us, a legacy podcast series with our midwife elders, an archival offering through the Perinatal Pause Podcast with Jennie Joseph, where we rest, reclaim, and remember one story at a time. Welcome to The Hands That Caught Us, a sacred series within the Perinatal Pause Podcast with Jennie Joseph. In each episode, we sit in reverence with our elder midwives, keepers of ancestral knowledge, community healers, and witnesses to the sacred continuum of life. These conversations are a pause, a restoration, and a reclaiming of our birthright. These are the stories that built us, and these are the stories that sustain us.
Well, welcome. I'm so happy to have my dear colleague, friend, and sister, elder midwife Debrah Lewis, join us today. Hi, Debrah.
Hi, Jenny. Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you for being here. I could just sit here and grin. That's all I need to do. Oh boy. Debrah, I know you're out there in Trinidad and you have done so much work across your lifespan, but let's go all the way back. Let's talk about when and where. How did midwifery find you? What was it?
As a child, my mother was a volunteer at the local hospital. I was born in Guyana in South America, but then my parents moved to Antigua in the Caribbean. And so that's where my mother did this volunteer work at the hospital. And sometimes I would go with her. And I always really appreciated the nurses and their interaction with the patients and how much I thought that impacted their care and their recovery and all of that. So I decided that I wanted to be a nurse.
What age were you at that point?
I would have been about 15.
So
early teens to about 15. So then I went to nursing school in the United States. So I moved up to the United States and joined my siblings where I went to nursing school. And, I enjoyed it. But when I hit the maternity area, that was it. I was just enthralled with it. And I remember one of the lecturers saying to me, you do well, your grades are good. She says, but there's something special about what I'm seeing from you in the maternity area. So once I was finished nursing, I decided to explore what my options were to go further to ensure that I was only working in that area. And I decided midwifery. The spirit said, this is what you want, because I wanted something that was a little bit more autonomous than working in that area as a nurse, but definitely not medicine. And I'm not sure why, but medicine was not even in the remote picture for me at all. Because I do remember a couple of people saying, so, well, then why don't you just, become an obstetrician, an OBGYN? And I said, no, midwifery. This is what I want to do.
I love that you use the word enthralled. I mean, that resonated with me immediately. I think those of us midwives listening, we would probably really relate to that word. That's an amazing word for this call-in, right?
Yes.
It just encompasses your whole everything.
It does. It goes into your core. It's in your spirit. And it's almost hard to describe. But, enthralled, I didn't think about that word, just came as we were speaking. But that is what it is. It's, and I've just never regretted it. My clients to this day say to me, oh, you really love your job. And I said, more than that, it is so much a part of me. I could never see myself doing anything else. And as I get older, I probably should start to think about doing less, but I love it. It's real. It's a part of my being. So I've never regretted that decision to go into midwifery. I also thought, women and their families are going to be having babies for a long time. So it's something that I can do. I wanted to travel wherever in the world you go. There will be families giving birth. So all of those things sort of fed into my final decision, but those were really minor compared to just the spirit saying, this is for you.
Yeah, I swear it's like such a um I think we have a sisterhood in midwifery. Everyone, like you say, around the world even recognizes it, understands it, this longevity of this work, of this
Mm.
calling, of this profession. I mean, it has started when time began and it is continuing. I'm like you. I've done nothing else in my adult life. I was 19 when I started training. I've been a midwife every single day of my life up to now. I'm 66
Yeah,
and I would not change a day, not one day.
absolutely.
Wow. Talk
Absolutely.
about the very first birth. Can you remember it? When was it that you had that experience? How old were you?
So I was my first birth as a student,
Mm,
and I had the fortune of having a throughout my, well, for the majority of my student life as a midwife, I had Black mentors and preceptors, which was
mm,
really meaningful for me. But I
mm.
remember my first one, and the midwife looked at me and she said, "Are you sure you've never done this before?" And I said, "That's because you can't feel my heart." It was about to jump out of my chest, you know? But on the exterior, I looked very confident and calm. But I remember my chest like touched the client's leg or something, and I pulled back because I thought she's going to feel it pounding.
Mm.
But the joy of this life coming into the world and understanding that that moment was never going to happen again.
That's right.
People
Oh.
think that because we've done so many births, it becomes it doesn't. Each one is special because
Hmm.
that one is never going to happen again for us or for that family.
Right, right. It is that's when we speak of the honor of being able to attend and support, the privilege of being
Yes.
able to be part of, be present to witness even.
To witness, yes. So when families say thank you, I said, no, thank you.
That's
Thank
right.
you for, I have so much gratitude for you making the decision and giving me that honor. The,
Yes.
th- the acknowledgement goes to you. And I also feel like what I do is guided. It's not of me, it's through me, but it's definitely not of me. So there are many times I don't know. I do things and I reflect and say, oh, I wonder what, but I don't question. I
Yes,
just I have ultimate faith and
that's right.
trust.
Yeah. It's interesting. Can you recall or do you know your ancestral piece? Who caught you? Whose hands were you born into? Do you have anything down in your line that you're aware of as far as how do we get here? Because I feel it all is interconnected.
Right. So historically, my siblings were all born at home, but I
Mm,
was the first one actually to be born in a small private hospital.
mm,
But I distinctly have the vision of women being around my mother. And
mm.
suppose in those days, that's who the village was,
Yes,
so, but I distinctly have the vision of women surrounding her. But as I said, I was the first one born in a hospital, so a different experience for her. But I think that because the village was present,
yes.
and because she went home quickly, I feel as if the energy and the reception that I got was as if we were at home and she was in a familiar space and surrounded by people that she felt comfortable with and
Mhm.
felt very safe and secure, because that is what I feel.
Isn't that interesting? So, again, there's a lot here in terms of embodiment when it comes to midwifery, from the midwife's perspective, but also from the birthing family. What people, when they are part of that experience, they feel and remember and hold stuff differently. Definitely embodied stuff, right?
Yes.
Um, I'm listening to you and I'm thinking about how, as generationally, we keep moving further and further away from obviously the traditional, although around the world there are so many communities, cultures, countries where traditional is still the main way, thank goodness, right?
Yes.
But we look at how we are today and we are trying to replace and replicate now some of these older ways with making sure that women have women, other family, other village members surrounding them for their safety. Now thinking about that, do you think we're doing well with trying to replace what used to be standard? How do you feel about that?
I think we are. I think we're becoming more and more conscious of what needs to be done.
Mm-hmm.
And we are trying to move towards that. And we are successful up to a point.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I feel like there is also an increase in institutional
Yes.
care and institutional birth. And I think that's where the barrier is, because there are limitations.
Right.
There at many levels, there are limitations. So quite often, if I'm working with a family that for some reason has to go to an institution, we have long discussions about how to still be able to create something close to what you'd like to experience within those confines.
That's right.
Because the reality is that is the option for some. And so,
or the choice even.
Or choice, that's true. That's true, choice. But at the same time, I asked them, talk to me about what you would like from the experience. Talk to me about what you envision. Talk to me about what you're feeling. And then let us try to work at creating that as best as possible.
Yes. Debbie, talk to us about Mama Toto. Talk to us about what you've created, how it started, and why.
Well, the thing is, I always had the vision of creating a center that would provide care for women and their families. So I moved to Trinidad many years ago, and that vision was tucked away in the back of my head. And we had a group of about 4 midwives that we would meet regularly. We were all attending home births. And so we would meet regularly to support each other, because although we had the legal framework to do it, there was becoming more and more resistance against it. So we would meet to support each other and complain and, say, oh, it's going to be okay. And then eventually we had a client who somehow worked her way through all of us. So she did classes with one of the midwives. I attended her birth. Another one did breastfeeding support. And in the end, she said, you really have to come together and do something to provide an option for women and their families. And we said, yeah, we've been talking about it, but we don't have any money to be able to do that. It's definitely in our dreams. And she said, no, you don't understand. You have to. Because shortly after her experience with us and the kind of support and choice and so on, and that she was able to have, and just the respect that was given to her in terms of what she wanted, she then had a friend who gave birth in an institution, and it was the complete opposite. And that's when
a hospital,
a regular hospital. And she said, you have to do something.
That's right.
So she put us in touch with a friend of hers who helped us to write a proposal. And we got together, we fed her the information, and she put together a funding proposal. So we set up Mama Toto as a non-profit organization, because that allows us to get funding to support some of the work that we want to do. And we were successful. We call that client our catalyst, because she's the one that really gave us that final push, And so we set it up in 2004. We were able to get funding to buy property and all of that. And our first birth was in January 2008. So we have 2 parts to it. We have a resource center where we do childbirth education, prenatal yoga, baby massage. We have support groups. Our support groups have been hugely successful. We have a support group initially for parents, but the fathers said they wanted a separate group because they felt like there were things that they wanted to share among themselves separately. Right. So we provided the space, and they, that has taken on a life of its own that has been really successful. The other group we have is for families who've had a loss. And again, I had a client who had a loss, and she said, if I didn't have you as my midwife, who can I turn to? Where can I go to? And she identified there was actually nowhere else.
That's right.
In Trinidad and Tobago, really. And so we started a group. So we offered the space. Initially, the midwives would lead the group, but we recognized very quickly that that's not what they wanted. They wanted someone who had had the experience that they had to be able to honestly say from their heart, yes, I understand. And so that group as well continues. And through that group, we were able to do a lot of education, because at the core of Mama Toto also is education.
What years are we talking about, Debrah, right now, as far as this?
So our first birth, 2008, but those support groups started before that. So perhaps around 2006 or so, to date. And so there's the mother support group, mothers and mothers to be, fathers to be, and the miscarriage and loss. And it's called Babies Who Live Only in Our Hearts. And also the people attending that group developed a booklet. So all their work, we just, sort of provided the space and allowed it.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So they developed a booklet, which we got sponsorship for. That booklet for families who've had a loss is now available throughout Trinidad and Tobago in all of the public hospitals and some of the private hospitals. And that support group continues. They can have a one-to-one or a group session where they come together. I mean, really important, because it is the only thing that exists for families. We lobbied the hospitals not to put those women on the postpartum ward.
Right.
So easy things that they could fix, just identify another space. But it was, it was battles, but with persistence and a clear vision, we managed to do it. So a lot of what Mama Toto has also done is advocate for those types of changes, advocate for partners being allowed to be in the labor and birthing room with the women who are giving birth. So we have done a lot of advocacy. We've done a lot of education, so core education, not with the intent of women ultimately choosing us. Because as you said, it's a choice.
Just as public health, right? As a public service.
Exactly. We just want you to know these are your options, and then you make the decision, and we support you. So the childbirth education, all of those things are free. Yes. If an external person is doing the class, like the baby massage, for example, they can charge a fee. However, if they're using our space, they also have to agree to offer a certain percentage pro bono and a certain percentage sliding scale, which is what we do at the other part of what we do, which is the birth center.
Yes.
So the birth center, we take care of them throughout the pregnancy, labor, birth, and up to 6 weeks postpartum. But because, again, we want anyone who wants to access that care to be able to do it, not just those who can afford it. Because we have two parallel healthcare systems in Trinidad and Tobago. We have the public healthcare, which is all free. And then we have private healthcare, which is accessible to only a few because it's very expensive. So we have positioned ourselves somewhere in the middle so that people who can't afford private care, but maybe could afford something, can come to us. But we also want those women who feel like their only option is the free option to be able to come to us as well. So we have the 3 levels. We have the pro bono sliding scale for families who are perhaps employed but really can't afford the private care. And then we have the full pay. And to support them, we used to access funding to support the pro bono and the sliding scale, but we now have what we call a support a birth fund. So any donations that we get, any fundraising that we do goes to that fund to be able to support those families to come to us.
What a comprehensive model. And it speaks to, we look at midwifery as this one thing sometimes, and it's a set of competencies or skills, and that's it. But yet we midwives know, the families also know, because they already are used to depending on midwifery for this. They know that we encompass this entire continuum of care, this wide spectrum, which is not just the physiological piece, but rather it covers mental health, emotional health, like you said, advocacy, organizing, right?
Yes.
Like we're doing this complete gamut of things, not because we have to, but because we want to. Because for some reason, in all the medical professions across the world, this is the one that, wherever it is the same.
It is. It absolutely is. And we, as you said, it really is so broad what we do.
Yes.
A client said to me the other day, she said, you have helped me to really get the experience I wanted, but it wasn't at Mama Toto. She said, why would you do that when Mama Toto is here? It's like you're giving away business. And I said, because we're not in the business to want everyone to come to us. This is not the model for everyone. We're in the business trying to ensure that you have all the information you need and that the decision that you make supports you in what you want. And I say you plural. I always tell them you plural because you're not in this alone.
That's right.
So yes, it's really, we really do a lot as midwives. And I do think people don't understand how comprehensive what we do is.
I agree. I think, some of the modern day questions that people ask are interesting because there's such things as, what's the difference between a midwife and a doula? Like, isn't that the popular question of the moment? Like,
yes.
And you want to explain it, and then you're like, there's these vast differences, but certainly in America, at least, folk have gotten real confused recently. And, it's become an interesting point of, I think diverting and distracting us from the real point, which is that midwives have always been and will always be with women across all of these areas. We are not a monolith. We are not in this one thing. We managed to help somebody, have the baby come from inside to outside, and that's us. No, it is all the things you just described and more.
Yes.
And it's also very interesting how individual midwives somehow, if we'd never met, we would never know, but we are so similar in the things that we dream up and think up and cook up and scheme to get to, right?
Yes, that's right.
The amount of times when I speak with other midwives, no matter where they're from, no matter what way they're working, what discipline they're working in, so many of the things are the exact same.
Exact same thing. Maybe a slightly different flavor, but at the core, they're the same. And I tell people that all the time. I said, I've done a lot of work globally with midwifery, but I'm telling you, it doesn't matter what country, there are so many similarities in what we do and what the struggles are. There are absolutely more similarities than differences.
Talk a little bit, Debrah, about your global work, because you single-handedly have taken the midwifery world and just held it in the palm of your hand. Share with us about your global work, your global influence even, because you are such a powerhouse in midwifery for all of us.
Right. And the thing, so, I live in Trinidad, and I would hear all the time references to Latin America and the Caribbean, but the Caribbean was never there. It was really Latin America. And that really is what gave me the nudge to say, you know what? No, like we're here, we're present, midwifery is alive and well. So hands up. So what do I need to do to make us more visible? So the first thing I did was I ran for a board member of the International Confederation of Midwives. I was going to be the first person from the Caribbean to do that, going against, the powerful North Americans. And in that same year, Jenny,
What year was that, Debbie?
That was 2005.
Okay.
2005. So I nominated, the Trinidad and Tobago Association of Midwives, nominated Venus Mark, who is like our mother of midwifery. We nominated her for an award at the International Confederation. We submitted an application to host an ICM regional conference in Trinidad, and I ran for board member. I was like, we are doing it all because it's time for us to be recognized. I'm tired of seeing these people with the same kind of faces representing all of us, right? And we were successful in all of them. And then I thought, whoa, what did I just do? This is pretty serious work here that we now have cut out for us. But, the regional conference in Trinidad was actually 2004. So it was just before I actually became the board member, because I became the board member the next year. And it was very successful. We managed to have over 400 delegates from over 50 something countries present in Trinidad. And then the following year, I became the ICM regional board member representing North America, so the US, Canada, and the Caribbean. So finally, I used to say it's North America and South America, and the Caribbean is the link that connects them. But nobody saw us. They just saw those two, But then we stepped up and we absolutely became visible. And I was a board member for 6 years, and then I became the vice president of the International Confederation for another 3 years. And then I made the decision to step down and not run again, because it was really taking me away from Mama Toto. And I had to think of, long term, and as they would say, minding my own business, but the global work was really very, very rewarding.
Yes. Well, I mean, so we're 20 years later, and this groundwork was laid and championed by you, how you stood for all of us. And when we look at midwifery, like, we're centering mama, baby, family. But I think this is the era now, thanks to people like yourself, where we begin to recognize we must center midwifery to move midwifery forward, because it seems like midwifery is in danger.
Yes.
Even with all the work that folk have done, even with ICM, even with, large bodies of support for midwifery, for the profession, it still strikes me, and I'm a little unnerved, that we aren't as strong in this profession as we could have been, should have been, or will soon be. I think because I started out in England and Europe, where midwifery was normal, midwifery is standard, and arrived in the States in 1989 and had a horrible rude awakening to, what do you mean there's no midwives? We don't do that anymore. That's what I was met with. And that was, 35 years ago. Looking at where we are now in midwifery, and how I think so much of what we're doing is being undermined. You can have full-on countries saying, midwifery is not a thing. We don't want it. We're not going to do it, like putting their foot down. And yet mothers, people, birthing people, families are going to keep having babies. Just like they're going to keep dying. Like, we don't have these arguments around funeral homes and we'll take, right?
Right.
No one's trying to work on that side of things. Yet here we are. Birth will continue because humanity is continuing.
Yes.
And on a global scale, I wonder, what are we to do? How are we to prevail? What are your thoughts, Deb?
Well, I talked about going into the global work because of the Caribbean, but I did my midwifery education in the United States, so I'm very familiar with that model. And in addition, and as a part of the Caribbean, what I wanted was more representation from us, as I said, people who look like me, you know. And what I've seen really over the years is a sort of denigration of that. It's just we've lost so much. We even when we look back in many countries in terms of what the traditional midwives did, traditional,
Yes.
whatever, however you want to refer to them. In the Caribbean, they were called middies, or different names. But that is important knowledge.
That's ancestral knowledge.
Yes. That we're losing, but we're losing it because it's not documented anywhere, one. And two, the powers are not giving it the respect and recognition that it needs.
That's right.
So we have to fight for that. We have to ensure that we capture what is left of it, and really incorporate it into what we're doing. We can't afford to lose that. And also I said, I became involved with the International Confederation of Midwives because that was the global body. I suppose it continues to be the global body, but I also feel like we, in our little pockets, also have to do a lot of work.
Yes. We have to, especially in relation to honoring and acknowledging the traditional midwives.
Yes. So we can utilize, ICM has the ears of the other global bodies. So perhaps they create documents and so on. What we have to do is figure out how to adapt those, use them, take what we can from it, but really to support our work with what we're doing.
Yes. What does it mean to you? How do you feel when we talk about midwifery and birth as sacred? Midwives as the guardians of that sacred birth. The fact that, our birthplaces, our sites of delivery of having our children as sovereign. How does that fit in with this current need? How do you see that being part of what we have to do?
I tell people all the time that I think as midwives, we stand with our hands open, like, spread open around families, because that's really an important part of what we have to do. We, I think, have a responsibility to guard and honor that space, because we are the only ones that recognize, not only, but we're by far the majority that it is. There's a recognition of what that space should mean to those babies, to the families. And so, yes, I think we have to do that. We can't, and unfortunately, it's not all midwifery that's doing that, but we have enough. We have enough of us that recognize the value and the importance of it to get it done. What we need to do, I think, is that we have to network.
Yes.
Better with each other. I think we have some silos. If we just think of you and I, we know a lot of people, a lot of groups, individuals, etc., doing good work.
Yes.
But how do we link all of that together? How do we make that force bigger?
That's right. Build power. We need power. And we need organizing. I mean, any movement, I think, always comes back to these basic tenets. We have got to get to a place of solidarity.
Yes.
I think a lot of times we have to get over ourselves.
Yes, we have to get past ourselves.
Right. You have to calm down a little bit here and just like, okay, for the greater good, for the actual movement.
Yes.
Literally for humanity.
Yes.
We have to find a way. We have to find a path. What do you do personally? Where's your resilience coming from? Where are you getting that? How?
There, like with anybody else, there have been many times I've had moments of, this is not worth it. It's not worth it. I don't want to do this anymore, and then all a client has to say is, oh, you know, I
I'm
mean,
laughing because I know that one.
yes, nothing more than, they barely have to say anything. They just
With
have
the
to
big
look at,
eyes, big
yes,
eyes, right?
yes,
Little
they
couple
just have,
tears coming.
exactly, you know, and this is the baby, and that's it. Like you're back,
Right.
you're 150% back on board, you know. So those moments are very fleeting, and also understanding where you have made an impact. So when I look back at, as I said, the hospitals here were not allowing anyone in to support persons in labor and at birth. So baby steps, it took a long time, but now they are. Now they
Yes,
actually have a policy
that's
that they
right.
must be allowed. So when I look back at those things, and sometimes we think what we've done hasn't been much.
That's right.
When we look at ourselves, we think, oh, yeah. But if you really sit and reflect on the changes that have taken place, I mean, you have to accept that, yes, there has been a lot, still a lot more to do, but recognize what you've been able to accomplish. So those are the things that keep me going. When I see that perhaps it took too long to make a change in my perspective, but the fact that you were able to get the
That's
change.
right. You achieved it. You
Yes.
achieved it.
Yes.
How about taking care of yourself? I mean, as we're all aging out now, how and what are you doing? How do you rest?
Yeah, that has been a learned behavior because I definitely didn't. I mean, I can't say that I've ever felt burnt out necessarily. So I suppose I've been doing it in small ways,
Right.
but really paying attention to it. I had to learn how to do that. I had to learn how to say no. And I had to learn how to step away sometimes and really step away, because, you know, you want to step away and perhaps take some time off, let's say, but there's that one client that has begged you to be present. And so you say to them, well, okay, I'll be off for this week, but if she goes into, no, you can't, it doesn't work. So I've actually learned how to have a conversation and say, I'd really love to, but I can, you know, I've learned how to say that, but it's a practice.
It is. And it's hard to maintain, especially when you don't have always the same kind of backup that you'd like, that your clients, you know, they will try their best to, you know, I want to be only with you. And they're like, no, 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 we're all the same. And it's all no, 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 I want to be with you. And then, you know, I'm like the egomaniac, right? Like it hits me like, oh, well, okay, then. Obviously, it has to be me, right? And I join right in. But I actually have stopped delivering babies. I will, in this November, will make 2 years, and I can't believe I pulled that off. I thought it would
Wow.
literally kill me.
Yes.
45 years in this work,
Yes.
and I was like,
Yes.
oh no, I can't stop, but I did.
Yes.
So,
Yes. No,
you
we
know,
learn how to do, and I've learned how to take time off and still be in the country because that was the other thing. The only way is if I
that's
left.
right. They know.
If I left the country, but I've learned how successfully how to say, you know, I need a week off. So I'm taking this week off. I'm not taking any calls. I'm not, but it takes a lot. It takes a lot to get, but it's important. And I also I love music. So I will, like this evening, I'm going to a jazz concert.
There you go.
So those things as well, I realize really refill my soul. They give me, they refuel it, you know, to keep me going. So, but really, really important to do self-care. Too many of us ignore it in the beginning.
That's
and
right.
then when we realize it, it's a little bit late. So it's to start, you know, addressing it before we get to that point.
What do you wish these young midwives, these soon-to-be midwives, these juniors in the profession, what wisdom do you have for them? What do you want to share with them from looking back over these many years of your own work, your own service? These up-and-coming folk, it's different.
Yes.
Strikes me as the, you know, we want to be able to, I feel, to pass on, just like historically our ancestors, the midwives on whose shoulders we stand, they passed on their knowledge empirically for millennia.
Yes.
And the way we are structured nowadays, we don't always get that. Our few elders that are still here, what can we share for these young'uns as they come up into this work?
I would really like to see us being able to mentor them a little bit more. I think quite often some of the role models that they have, they don't see a lot of us, and I know that is one of the reasons that we came together in this group, is to try to have more of that available. But I also want to say to them this, like, you cannot see this as a job.
That's
you know
true.
and
That's
people say, well, it has to be a calling and you can't teach that, and maybe not, but you have to understand that if you are caring for that family throughout the pregnancy and birth and all that, it's a special time. It's a vulnerable time. It's a spiritual time. It is so much. It's mentally, they're challenging. You have to be able to provide what they need. And if you can't, then you shouldn't be doing it. But do not go into it thinking, well, it's just this, and it cannot be a routine and norm. It has to be individualized care. You just have to put more into it. And I'm not saying deplete yourself to give someone else, but there is just a standard and a level of emotional, mental, and physiological that you have to give. That's absolutely necessary, that I'm not always seeing now.
That's such wise counsel. I think there's a responsibility that if you're not careful, you can be absent to that accountability and responsibility that in taking on this profession, this work, that is inherent.
Yes.
And if you choose to maybe be a little cavalier with that, it can actually be dangerous.
Yes. Yes. Dangerous for everyone involved, and understanding that the impact that you have at that moment, although to you as the provider, as the midwife, might be minor, that impacts that family's lifetime.
That's right. I was blessed to get my midwifery school up and running for the second time in Florida. In 2020, I got an accreditation for the midwifery school. We opened the doors wide. I was so excited. And I thought I had everything ready because, I had the curriculum and I've been doing this work, and I knew how to get students through and learn their competencies and their skills and, all the things. And the piece that I didn't take on was I didn't think about safety. I didn't think about safety for the students. I didn't think about safety for the faculty. It didn't cross my mind in terms of that was one very integral piece of training student midwives, especially in the academic setting.
Right.
Because there wasn't the way inside of the curriculum, for example, to just embed that when they're on the clinical sites, when they're out in the field. There was no way. I hadn't thought through all of that in terms of the volume of people that we were trying to educate and manage that for each of them.
Right.
When we were small and I would do 2 and 3 at a time, no biggie. They were basically doing an apprenticeship model. They were under my wing. They were at my center. They were right up close. But when I expanded the numbers and we started doing on a national level, people were in different states and all over. Hybrid, you name it, woof, tinderbox.
Yes.
Because it wasn't clearly embedded. We've come a long way. We've gotten a lot of things sorted. I feel much more confident that we are providing these aspects in the training so that when they're out the gate, they will already be off on a good footing. But that was a wake-up call.
Yes. Yeah. And you see, you wouldn't think about it because it's inherent in you.
Indeed.
And so there's an assumption, but no, once they're out there in those other settings and institutions, you cannot absolutely control what others are feeding into them. So, that's why it has to be really embedded and discussed and brought out in the open. Yeah.
It was tough, and it's a work in progress. But just like we continue to fine tune, straightforward midwifery skills, competencies, training, we also have taken that part on. And I think we're all richer for it. We're doing better for it. And it's interesting also how it points right back to what you were saying earlier about the traditional midwives who handed down midwifery knowledge and power empirically from mother to daughter, grandmother to grandniece. That was already baked in.
Yes.
Those are the models that teach us how to do that.
Yes.
Right? It's not just learning how to do the delivery or how to do the prenatal exam or learning how to check the postpartum family. It's these other aspects as well.
Yes. It's really a total sort of holistic living in it.
Right?
Learned competency.
Right. And so we must protect that, because when we lose that, we've lost everything.
Yes. Because we become competent in quotation marks, but it's not
it's
competent
not
in skills, maybe. But midwifery, I remember telling someone, a student that was with me, and I said, you have excellent skills, but the package we have to do a little bit of work on.
That's right.
Because it's much more than skills.
That's right. That's right. So those of us that are long in the tooth, still hanging on, still here, we want to be able to make sure that what we've learned along the way can be passed on, that can be held. I'm so grateful that you've been willing to talk to me today and to share some of what you've achieved and what you're still doing in the world of midwifery. If you could leave us with a blessing or a prayer or a piece of wisdom around midwifery from your experience, Deb, as an elder midwife, as our mama midwife that has led all of us midwives, as well as all of these people that you've served throughout your career. What would you want to share with us as we wrap up today?
I really want to share something that I've been guided by, and it is to allow yourself to be open to receive. So, for example, every time I'm going into a birth, I ask, however, God, Allah, the universe, to guide me. But I have to be open to that as well. So it's to be open to receiving that guidance. I always say, help me make the right decisions. Guide my hands to do what is the appropriate thing. And I also say, if the appropriate thing in your eyes is not for that baby to be born at Mama Toto, and you think it's necessary to transfer, I remain grateful.
Ooh.
Because it is out, I really feel there's a piece of it that is not in our control.
That's right.
And I think that we often forget that, and we want to make sure and do that, but just be open and accept it, and always exist in gratitude.
Exactly. Wow. Well, elder midwife, beautiful Queen Debrah, thank you for pausing with us today and sharing your story, sharing your sacred story. And may your hands and your heart and your history continue to guide us. And this has been a moment of remembering and resting and reclaiming with the Perinatal Pause podcast, and the hands that guide us, the hands that caught us. Thank you, Debrah, for coming on today. I appreciate you. I love you.
Thank you. Thank you.